What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Halftime Snacks podcast. This show features short interviews that you can listen during the halftime of your favorite sports events. Every Tuesday, I host fun conversations with talented people in the sports industry where we'll learn from their stories, knowledge, and experiences. So go grab your favorite snack and come snack with us. Are you ready? Let's go! Joining us for a quick halftime snack is an award-winning innovator whose background is packed with experiences in technology, sports, and marketing. This man is the former co-founder of Squawka, one of the world's fastest growing digital media and entertainment businesses in football, which he sold for over 1 million euros a few years ago. Currently, he runs Halfspace, a marketing agency with clients in sports and entertainment that delivers engagement, growth, and monetizations to their clients through innovative strategies and creative content. Today's episode will be jammed with lessons in sports marketing, entrepreneurship, content, and more. Without further ado, ladies and gents, Sanjit, Atwal.
Nice to be here, Ronan.
How are you, Sanj?
I'm very well, my friend. I'm very well. Thank you very much for inviting me.
We're celebrating your kid's birthday today, so let's have a blast of an episode, man. I want to kick it off with an icebreaker, and I want to ask you, who's your favorite historical figure, Sanj?
I'm really into polymaths, right? I'm really into guys and girls who know a lot of different things and specialize in a lot of different things. So you go back and you look at people like Isaac Newton, right? Like literally a master of many different disciplines, and there'd never really been anything like that before. Da Vinci was a polymath as well. Not many people in the sports world know that my degree at university was actually in film and television. So that was like my first proper career. And the great thing about learning about directors in film, loads of the really top ones are polymaths as well. Look at David Lynch, makes some really amazing movies, brilliant artist as well, and really into his music as well. These are the kind of people I like.
Nice. I like those historical figures, man. An absolute polymath that you are, Sanjit. We're gonna be talking about so many of the things you've been into, man. Content, Squawka, advertising industry, everything that you've built, for the last 10 years. So let's just kick it off with a question that I've been having in my mind for a lot of time, and that is also because I'm a creator of content. I publish the newsletter every week, and I also publish podcast episodes. So I always wonder, like, what's more important for a content creator? Is it the quality of the content or the distribution? What are your thoughts about that?
I think it's changed a lot over the years. Right now, where we are in human history, it's the easiest it's ever been to get reach and distribution. Like, it's never been easier. You got €5, you can go get distribution, right, off of Facebook or Twitter or wherever you want to go. You can hit up somebody else's channel and get them to pump you out. You can go meet someone and they put you in a newsletter or whatever. Human beings didn't have that before. So when everybody can get reach, is distribution really that important? Yes, it's obviously important to do it, but that's the easy part. The hard part is the quality of the content. The hard part is building something that a certain demographic is really engaged in. They really get it, and they live it. Everybody in sports actually in the content business. Not many people actually know they're in the content business. they think there may be something else, but ultimately it is about the content and the quality of production and what you're building. And you've got to understand why it's quality as well. And that's kind of, I think, the cusp where a lot of great YouTubers, great TikTok creators, great people on Instagram, they know why their content is good and they are able to hone it. I guess the next real stage for sport is really trying to figure out getting under the skin of the content and really figuring out what works and what doesn't. Because the distribution is all there, right? People still want content to distribute across linear and OTT and all these other channels.
So was that the way you guys started Squawka, like trying to get a step ahead in the quality of the content and putting it out just as everyone else is doing and seeing what was sticking and what was not, and then repeating what was sticking? Or what was the initial strategy for you guys when you started that company?
Yeah, really good question. I started that business in 2011 with a friend of mine, Leo. we were both really big football fans, and we were looking around at the football ecosystem online. And look, there's a ton of places you can go for like content in football, right? There's so many, must be a million places at least. But the angle that wasn't really looked at 10 years ago was statistics, and real-time statistics in football. There were, at halftime on Sky Sports or on the BBC, you might have a few statistics halfway through a match, but nothing really meaningful. We decided that the way that we would get into the content business was through technology. We would license a load of raw data. We'd build technology to visualize that data in real time, and then build a content business around it. So start to explain the world's biggest game in a way that had never been explained before. I saw a really fascinating post just before the end of last year, and it was talking about the 10 biggest innovations in football in the world over the last 10 years. What have been the biggest things? There was VAR, of course. There was like the way that medical technology works now. People can get better and fitter and quicker and all this kind of stuff. Out of all of the 10, statistics was not one of them, which I was amazed by. But then I was also kind of like happy by, because it meant that we'd done such a good job, like really driving statistics into the game, that it was now just a common thing. It's everywhere now. And the only way we really figured out how the content was going to work was create a load of it, right? Create loads and loads, and you get it out there with a really good content team, really smart guys. And you start to figure out, okay, well, this kind of content works best for this subset of fan at this time of the day. And then over a period of time, as long as you're building a team correctly, and they're nuanced enough to be able to feed back from what's happening in social, what's happening on the website, newsletters, podcasts, videos, all this kind of stuff, they build out a real good knowledge of what works and what doesn't. And I think that's when a content business really starts to move, is when you understand, like someone like a Barstool Sports, like in the States, like the way that they produce the content and the way they ramp that out, they know what works. They've got the science and the creativity behind it, and they're kind of hitting each of those strands with these inbuilt revenue streams of YouTube and all this kind of stuff alongside sponsorship. These are the areas that Squawka really started to launch itself into, and it was a content business. It was also a tech business, and it's about building those two things together to create something special in football.
One of my lessons probably in the content, side of things is, or probably one of the weaknesses that I see in the content side of things, is that there's a lag in the results put in, like represented from the efforts that you guys put. I'm sure that you guys have some experience with that, but I want to know if there was any point in time where you were like, are we really doing this? Is this really, gonna hit it off one day? Is this gonna be, something, or are we just, putting a lot of effort into something that, maybe we're not seeing enough results as of now? I wonder if there was a point in time where you were like, man, this is pointless. Like, what are we doing? Like, and then like kind of like a little bit later start to hit it off.
Look, when you're starting a business or you're your own creator, stuff's always hard, right? It will always be hard. Everything, even like the good times, are hard. That's just the kind of nature of the beast, right? That's what you're kind of going into. There wasn't any time when any of us turned around and said, "Oh, this isn't going to work," or "This is wrong," and we're wasting our time, whatever. Because it's very difficult to start a business with that kind of DNA in you. Right, so you probably see over a period of time, when you interview entrepreneurs or successful people in any field, the key trait that they all have is resilience. Right, check out a book called Grit by Angela Duckworth. She spent years and years studying successful people in all areas, not just athletes or entrepreneurs, but scientists, doctors, everyone. And this single trait that she picked out to say, right, this is what defines success. This is the thing. It's not talent. It's not any of these other things. They're great, but resilience is a single recurring trait. And I think when you look at really good entrepreneurs, when you look at people, great creators, they don't have that feeling of, man, this is all rubbish. Like, we've got to just stop this and go, yeah, there's some things that work and some things don't work, but they have the resilience to go, okay, great. Now, how are we going to improve on that? How are we going to go to that next stage? Resilience is a nice way of saying it. For some people, it's just pure pig-headedness. It's just pure, stupidity. Like, I'm just going to keep on going and let's see what happens, right? You see a lot of that with very successful people. They're kind of blinkered to the rest of the world. They're just so super focused. I don't recommend being like that because you miss out on a lot of other stuff. But having that resilience in you, that's really what it's about.
We're going to be talking a little bit more about the lessons from building Squawka and everything a little bit later. But I want to first ask you, Sanjit, one question, and that is that, man, you've been, of course, you've consulted clients, big clients in both sports, media, entertainment, television. You have such a background in television and film, as you mentioned. So kind of like you've been in the advertising industry, you know exactly how it works. You kind of like you have a home field advantage when we're talking about advertising. So I want to know if there's any like 3 things that you would advise yourself when you were 18 years old, or things that you wish you knew when you were 18 years old, just starting out in the advertising industry. I guess that it has changed a lot since you were 18 years old. I'm not saying that you're old, Sanjit. I'm just saying that things change super fast.
They do, yeah. But no, you're right.
What are some of the things that you wish you knew if you were 18 years old right now?
I think there's a few things. First of all, at 18, you think you know everything, right? And you actually know nothing. It's the opposite side of things. I finished university at 21 and went into film and TV and advertising then. And I guess the thing that I didn't really appreciate was what the economy of ideas actually is, right? How an idea gets to turn into something and is actually making money for someone. It's not just about having one big idea and that's it. It's like, what's the process? Like, what are all of the stakes in the chain that make this thing work? So that would be definitely one thing. Second thing is, some of the best training I ever had was in advertising on the sales side, like how to sell advertising to brands. I wish I'd had that earlier, because not that everybody wants to be a salesperson, but having a grasp of how sales works in advertising and media is one of the biggest tools you can have in your kit, right? Just being able to converse in that land and being able to use those skills, massive. And if I could really go back in time and do that, as you're saying, probably it's a bit like Back to the Future, right? When you go back and you've got all the statistics for like what all the sports scores would be. For me, it would be trying to impart the lessons that the convergence of platform and creator economy has shown the world now. Right, because it's a whole new thing. Just wasn't here. It wasn't here when I was 18 years old, or even 21 years old. That has really instigated so much more in media, in creativity, in sport, in entertainment. And I think if you went back all that time and somebody knew preordained that this is what was going to happen, you could probably do pretty well for yourself, I'd say.
What is the biggest, or one of the biggest things that really has impressed you the most, or things that you're really shocked that really changed and are new now that weren't as then? Like, can you give us an example or two?
You're going to have to say social, right? Like, because that's just how, like, there wasn't, back then there was MySpace, right? And that was the big social network. But that wasn't where people consume news, right? It wasn't something that was trying to take over the way that people spent their entertainment time. It was more, like dating and stuff like that. So the way that people consume content, that's just fundamentally different from how things were back then, including podcasts as well.
Totally true. Let's talk about Squawka, man. Wow, it's one of my favorite businesses in football. It's one of my favorite pages to see on Twitter when in my football or soccer, as they know it in the States, list in Twitter. So very, very big fan of the type of content that they deliver, always, related to statistics, as you mentioned. But let's just talk about the business as itself, as what it means to like redevelop such a business, a business on that size, recognized by, any kid in the planet that knows about football, knows about Squawka. So, and also selling, I guess that, the negotiation process and everything. So I want to know if you can just, give us a little bit of your experience or your lessons on that. How did it really build up to the point where you were, convinced that there was something you wanted to sell and you wanted to, either keep working on it or not, and like, just guide us through like what was going on in your mind at the time and some of the lessons that you learned along the way.
I guess first of all, when you're starting a business, and when I started my first business with Leo like 10 years ago, none of it was about, hey, this is how much money we can make. Like, it just wasn't thing. Lots of people do that, and that's absolutely fine. That's just never been my thing. So it was never about, well, yeah, we can turn this into an 800 million pound business or this or that or whatever. It was more about believing that if you created something cool and you put a good business model behind it, it would be, one, you'd have lots of fun, you'd learn loads of things, and there's a way that you want to live your life, right? But then also that it's something that could potentially make money in the future. The business was self-funded to begin with. My business partner sold his previous business, so he put money in, and then we weren't paid for the first year or so. Like, we just kind of just worked hard and tried to build it up. Then when we realized we had something that would turn out pretty big, we started doing the whole fundraising thing, which is a whole other world of madness, like raising cash and presenting to venture capitalists and all this kind of stuff. It's a whole new world I'd never experienced. Just like when I was 18, I thought I knew everything. I was now 29, starting my first business. I was like, hey, I know everything. Like, this is gonna be easy. I can. Oh, you want me to go pitch this guy for money? Not a problem. I can go do that. I was like, actually, no, I can't do that. That's just like a whole other world. But you learn, right? You learn, and I was like, I became quite good at it. And over the period of years, went from funding round to funding round to funding round, carried on raising cash, and then eventually executed a deal with Fremantle Media, who were owned by RTL and Bertelsmann, and then they basically had control of the business at that point, and they wanted to go in a certain direction with it. It's their business at that point, so that's fine. And then they eventually sold it again to Catena Media, who are the now owners, and they've really grown the business. I think they were probably the right owners for the business ultimately. But going through that process is what you would imagine. It's super stressful. You never really know what's going to happen when. I guess looking back, I would say that the big deal is not always necessarily the right deal, if that makes sense. Like, it's quite hard to see, what is expression over here is seeing the wood through the trees, right? It's like if you're in the middle of the forest and like there's trees all around you, you don't know what's on either side. You can just see the trees, and that's it. You're like, cool, let's go that way or that way or that way. But if you were a bit higher up, looking around, you could see, oh, okay, over there's the water, over there's a town, or whatever. So you never really know that stuff, and you never really know your way around the corporate environment of selling businesses and all this kind of stuff. What I do know is we managed over a period of 6 years to build the most amazing team. Like, we had 55 people by the time that I was leaving, and that it was just the most incredible place. And you look around the football media industry, particularly now, there are so many people that all came from Squawka. So many top journalists now, their first job was Squawka, because we gave everybody a shot. Like, we had loads of interns. We were just creating so much content all the time that we knew everyone. Now, I go onto Twitter and I'll see journalists talking about a random match in, I don't know, Italy somewhere, in Serie A. I'm like, oh yeah, that guy, I know that guy. He used to work for us. Or that girl over there, she was one of our journalists, or whatever. So I'm very proud that we managed to help launch so many great careers in that business. But yeah, startups are hard, man. And they're really hard. We spoke about resilience. You got to understand yourself and your strengths and what you're not good at, just as much as you need to understand what you're good at. Something that I like to do is just surround myself with people that they're way better than me at certain things. You've just got to have it in whatever you're doing, because you can't do everything. You cannot be everywhere at the same time. And like I said before, if your sole goal is, money in this stuff, then there are easier ways to go out and achieve money, right? There are easier ways to do it than starting a startup. That is not the rationale for going for cash. A startup is, you're trying to create something. You have a desire to create something, and yes, you want cash eventually, but it's more about the journey, I think.
You have any regrets about selling it?
I think it's very difficult to ever say that anything was a regret, because you're learning, right? It's that you're literally there going, okay, now I know this was good or this is bad, or this is how to do negotiation here, and don't do that again, or here's warning flags you should look for from an investor, or whatever. You don't know this stuff, and it's actually pretty much impossible to look back and say, I wish I hadn't done that, because I'm very happy where I am right now. So like you don't know how things would have panned out, I think.
I see. I think that's a great takeaway. What is your vision? You've been working in sports marketing and all the things that we mentioned. What is the future of sports marketing in your eyes? How is it going to be changed with the new technologies? How is Half Space working towards it? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, when I left Squawka, I was looking at the sports industry and looking at rights holders, particularly like football clubs and people like that, trying to understand, well, what the hell is your business? Like, what is it? Like, really, what is it? Even though Squawka was in the sports industry, it wasn't in the business of sport, right? We weren't a rights holder. We didn't work with football clubs. We were a media business, media technology business. We worked for fans. But I was really curious about how something like a football club ran their operations. So over the course of 2017, I did loads of consultancy work. Brentford Football Club gave me my first shot. This is just on my own. Fulham Football Club, did a bit of work for them, a load and few other sports as well. And what I was really interested in was, okay, digitally, and from the technology and content point of view, general marketing, how are you guys set up? What connects to what? Like, where does all the plumbing go? Is there plumbing? Or did you just say there's plumbing and there is nothing there? And sometimes it was that case. The first learning that I had was when I was talking to people like football clubs about data. They just thought I meant email addresses, and lots of people in sport thought that's what data was, and that's fine. It's a massively important part of the data setup. It's not the only part by any stretch of the imagination, and that was a bit of a shock. And then I also saw that so many football clubs and everybody like this had so many agencies around them. They literally had like 6 or 7, like all doing slightly different things. And I was like, wow, you guys are supposed to be spending a lot of money, and you're quite a small club. Like, why are you doing this? It doesn't make any sense. And you start to realize that because their teams are so small, really, like most teams, apart from the top 0.01% soccer clubs in the world, everybody else's teams are pretty small, right? And they're being hired from within, or they're ex-journalists, whatever. And now they've got to, run a sponsorship campaign across Facebook, for example. Like, that's not what they've been trained to do. And you start to think that, okay, hang on a minute, there's a better model here, because ultimately, what's been happening in not just football, in nearly all sports, is this really weird space where people are spending way too much on their marketing and commercial operations, with loads of agencies, loads of suppliers everywhere, all this kind of stuff. But because they're not putting the right data in at the start of that journey, start of that funnel, they're not getting the most efficient results. So they're spending too much and not getting enough. It's literally a CFO's nightmare. It's crazy. Like, actually, sport is fundamentally a bit of a broken industry in the way that it's set up. And one of the problems that sport has is also its strength. It's so tribal, it's so passionate. Sports never really had to work hard to get eyeballs. They had to work hard to get distribution in all that course of human history. When everyone's struggling for reach, sport had it because it's sport. And guess what? Anybody can have it now. This kid on Instagram, this kid on TikTok's got more reach than you, football club. What are you talking about? Like, and he hasn't done anything. Like, he's opening a soda bottle with his teeth. Like, this is the world we live in now. So sport has not worked hard enough, right, at trying to compete. You look at something like fintech, you look at like e-commerce, you look at these areas, you look at how scientific every part of a user journey is, and how everything is analyzed. And I was in e-commerce before I started Squawka, so I know about these things. And I was like, guys, if you just worked as hard as these guys did, you would blow everybody else out the water with your product from a commercial point of view. You should be brilliant. You're already good, but you could be over here. And figuring out how to position a business to say, right, put data at the heart of everything, and this is how it's going to affect the rest of your business in terms of commercial, marketing, rights, sponsorship, ticketing, all of these kind of areas. And this was 4 years ago now. And I think that what we're seeing now in the whole of the sports industry globally is more of a shift to not just digital transformation, it's more of a shift towards audience, right? Trying to understand audience and how audience impacts them in multiple different channels on the same day, in the same minute, in the same second. Like, how does that happen? It's not just that we've got a baseball game on, that's our product. Yeah, that's your product, but it's only on once every X amount of time. Your fans don't stop being fans at 1 o'clock in the morning living in Buenos Aires, right? And there's no game on. So what's your strategy here? How are you being part of their universe? How are you doing that? And I think that this shift to audience is the big, and I'm very careful about not saying fans necessarily. I think it is about audience. The shift to audience, I think, is the big change that's coming. Understanding audience and understanding how to tailor your proposition to them. And to understand that, you've got to get really deep into the data. You've got to get really deep into the audience data, understanding their affinities, understanding their socioeconomic status, these kind of things, because this is how you're going to best communicate with them and help them enjoy your products. This is what it is. Work like a fintech brand, think like a fintech brand, like work as hard as they do, have a comparable tech stack, these kind of things. And as an add-on to that, I would say probably the single biggest danger, the danger trap that sports organizations, rights holders, governing bodies have been falling into is, and this may sound slightly contradictory because I have been praising the platform economy, is putting all of their content, their great stuff, all into just YouTube or Instagram or whatever. Even though you get massive reach there and it's great and you can monetize some of that content, not all of it, some of it, and it's on a revenue share or whatever. As good as that stuff is, that data does not belong to you. That data belongs to Mark Zuckerberg. That data belongs to Jack Dorsey, whoever is behind the platform that you're on. And getting people in sports to understand it, and athletes as well, that's one of our critical missions, is helping people get that, because the bare bones of where the advertising industry is, sponsorship, big commercial revenue like that, where that's going is, if you're out pitching a new sponsor, and saying, hey guys, you can be on the front of our shirts, you can name our stadium, you've got access to our fans and all this exposure, that's great. We've already discussed how easy it is to get reach these days, right? Very, very easy. You don't need to pay 20 million in sponsorship to get that. The issue comes when that brand turns around and says, oh, hang on a minute, I can just buy your fans on Facebook for 21p a click. What do I need you for? And sponsorship is not just about reach or the clicks, it's about credibility, it's about association, it's about so many other things. However, when you're really in a tough economy, and lots of countries around the world are going to be in tough economies for the next 5 to 6 years, that's just what COVID's done, and it's bad anyway. When you're talking to brands like that, they're looking at the bottom line, right? Ultimately, they're like, well, what are we going to spend here? How are we going to do this? I don't need to do sponsorship with you guys because I can just buy your fans on Facebook and whatever. I'll run a strategy around that, and that's cool. The power of sports as an engagement tool is what people should be selling. But if you're selling that and you haven't got the equitable data set to Facebook to back that up, I think you're dead in the water over the next 5 years. I think you're dead. What are you selling ultimately here? Like, how are you competing with this? You're not, and you have willingly given away your data. It's not just someone's come up with a new strategy. You're just pushing all of your content into these other channels, and you've got no control over the data. There's no ownership there. So building out these really coherent first-party data strategies, as well as doing your other platform stuff, super important. Don't stop doing that. You've got to be building your first-party data strategy as well. It will affect you in so many more ways than your email CRM list, right? It's just so many other things it's going to affect for you in the future as a business. And I guess that's one of the problems with sport, right? I mean, football clubs in the UK, a lot of them, they're kind of part business. They're probably more social institution, right? They're local. They're local. They do stuff for their fans. All the sponsors are local, and they're there at the heart of the community, and that's fine. Got to ramp up the thinking into becoming a proper modern content-led business, and these are the things that make it happen.
So interesting how it ties up to the first discussion that we had regarding product or distribution, right? How soccer really has the distribution. But what about the product, right? Try to, as an organization, try to put up some, effort on that part using the data that you already have, and trying to understand more about your audience. And it's so interesting that you say that, because, even as content creators, I'm sure that you felt this the same way, at some point in Squawka, but it's all about really knowing what they like and what they enjoy more to create engagement, right? So it's not about how many followers do you have, but it's more like how many followers engage with what you post and engage with what you share. And so I guess that it's so interesting to see, this shift. And what you mentioned, man, it really blew my mind. Like, if you think about it, you're mostly competing against companies that already own the data, right? You're already competing against Facebook, and I don't see, like, Manchester United, even that it is the biggest club in the world. I don't see it competing against Facebook. Like, they're not even close, right? It's a technology company versus entertainment provider. So trying to be creative, using technology to find ways to learn about your audience and get closer to your audience without the need to use Facebook or any other platforms out there. I think that's key. And if I understand correctly, that's what you mean, Sanj. Is there anything else that you want to add? It is super interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I definitely don't want people to go away from listening to this and think, oh, hey, we should stop doing our social platforms. That is just not what I'm saying. That you just go harder on it, get it even tighter on your strategy there. But what I'm saying is, alongside that, there has to be a really strong first party data collection strategy on your own side, on your owned and operated platforms, on your websites, on your apps, any other products that you're bringing out that you own. This is quite an interesting one. And when you look at Real Madrid, and they're talking about the billion fans or whatever that they've got around the world. It's like, yeah, we've got most biggest fan base in the world, and any club, any rights holder, any sport ever. He's like, well, you do and you don't, because one of the things that we do a lot of work in half space is figuring out levels of fandom. So you may have someone who's following you on Facebook, and they're going to they're a season ticket holder, they're going to every home match. They're buying the kit every year, they're buying the mini one for their kids, and they're buying presents for the rest of their family and their friends, or whatever, hospitality once a year maybe. You've got all of that. And then you may have a fan in Southeast Asia somewhere who loves the club. It's great. They're following on Facebook, and they're maybe catching every game in a bar or at home or whatever, and they're buying some stuff online, but highly unlikely they're going to be coming over to the game. They're going to be at that level of hospitality and these other kind of things. I'm not saying that person's not a fan. I'm saying there's levels to fan. They need to be understood to be able to maximize the commercial and marketing potential of an organization. So just to come out with a blanket statement and say, hey, look at all these billion people, it doesn't mean I can go buy those people. Yeah, it doesn't mean anything. Like, it means that people are aware of you, and that's awesome. That's super cool. But anybody with a big enough budget can just come in and buy that, right? They can if they want. I'm not saying they should. The power of sport and the power of sponsorship, particularly in association and driving credibility for new brands and driving brands into new areas of the world, which is where Manchester United have been amazingly successful in helping brands around the world that piggyback off their brand as a local sponsor. These are the things that people should be really, really concentrating on. But you've got to be doing it with a really great data strategy behind it, because this is where the world's going.
Yeah, this is what the the algorithms are building for us. So I guess that first understand the algorithm, and also have an army of your own. Sanj, it has been such a pleasure to have you, man. I can't leave without asking you a last and more personal question, to
Sure.
share a little bit more of your spirit. Let's suppose that you find Aladdin's lamp, start to touch it, and out of a sudden you get the gene from an Aladdin. the one we all know. So, and he offers you one wish, just one. What would you ask for?
One wish. Wow, I think that's an interesting one. So I'm involved in a number of other organizations outside of my day job, one of which is a newly launched business in Thailand, which is working to rebuild and preserve coral reefs around the island. Not sure if you and your listeners are aware. Coral reefs are basically the lungs of the ocean, right? Helping drive more awareness of these kind of things is super important. But actually, the main thing that I guess I would answer is that what we should really be focusing on how to raise more awareness and drive more effective change in climate. That's what I'd ask for. Is that basically a blanket kind of every organization has this real spirit towards carbon neutral and more, because that's what the world is.
Man, to bring awareness on such an important and relevant, topic, I guess that there's no one better than you that knows about marketing and distribution. So I'm sure that everyone in the world is going to eventually know about that. And Sanjit, man, I want to wrap it up right here. I want to thank you so much for coming to the Halftime Snacks. It has been such a fun experience to have you and to talk with you and learn from you and your insights. Man, it was such an episode. I can't really thank you enough. I'm looking forward for everything that you're going to be doing in the next couple of years, man. And I hope we stay in touch to, work on things together. Anyways, thank you so much for coming to the Halftime Snacks. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe button and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. If you enjoy learning about the business and technology behind sports, make sure you subscribe to the Sports Tech Biz newsletter. I'll leave the link in the show notes. See you all next week. Bye-bye.